Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, when we last spoke, I believe it was Friday, and the Celtics had a press conference talking a little bit about the Ime Udoka situation. We haven't found out that much more in terms of specifics about it. I don't know when or if we are going to, but since Media Day was Monday, the players on the Celtics were asked a lot about this, and it seemed like, at least based off of their answers, they know as much as we know. Do you believe that to be true? And if that's the case, is management and ownership doing a good enough job communicating with the players?
I don't believe that they know as little as us. I'm sure they know more than us, just being within the organization and talking to people. And again, the players, obviously, in the off season aren't in the building, right? But, I'm sure they're still in contact with people within the organization. And I'm assuming this is something that was taking place during the season. I'm sure the players knew about this. I don't think Ime Udoka started this transgression, this fling, whatever you want to call it. And I think we can all agree that this was not a consensual relationship, that it's gone well beyond that, whether it be sexual assault, sexual harassment, whatever the case may be. It sounds very ugly. And I think the killer line was Matt Barnes last week on his podcast or on social media saying that it's 100 times uglier than we thought. That's right. Alarming. So is Ime Udoka essentially Christian Bale's character, Patrick Bateman, in the 2000 film American Psycho? I mean, is he just that far off the reservation that he's, a nice guy in front of everyone? Seems like he's got his act together behind closed doors, that, he's a psycho. I mean, I don't know. I mean, so these are details that are eventually going to come out. And I also think that because his fiance is Nia Long, I don't know if they're still together or not, but since his fiance is Nia Long, I would think not. She's, probably said, get out. But she's a very famous actress. So now this isn't just sports reporters covering this. This is entertainment reporters covering this, right? So now you've got TMZ involved. So someone's going to uncover exactly what happened. We don't need to know, and I don't want to know who the person or persons are that he did these things to. That's not going to be fair to that person who was the victim. But I think the players know some things of what was going on, right? Unless Ime Udoka, again, hid all of this, which, again, would seem far-fetched at that point. So I think they know some things, but they were instructed not to say anything because you still have some legal ramifications here. And who knows if this thing got to the point where this is going to be a police or a criminal investigation, now that opens up a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, so there's obviously this whole aspect of that's hanging over the Celtics' head is that, there's legal repercussions here. And I think everybody understands that. They hired a law firm. We talked about this on Friday to do the investigation and sort of make their referrals to the Celtics. But my interpretation, Sap, of the press conference, not the press conference, the media day on Monday was, okay, maybe the players know a little bit more than they're letting on, but I got the sense that they seem frustrated with the organization a little bit, and that they feel like maybe they should have known earlier or known a little bit more than what they do know. And I have a hard time believing this, that none of them were clued in at all. But I think that they feel like they should have been clued in more. And this is the sort of stuff, Sap, that I think that can really demo a organization's reputation amongst players and in the league, is if they're not good at communicating to the players and the players feel like they have no power or no representation there. And so I really hope that for the Celtics' sake and for Brad Stevens' sake and Wyc Grousbeck's sake, that they've done their real best to be in communication with the Celtics players to the extent that they can, as soon as they can, because otherwise this thing can get even uglier than it already is, and it's already really ugly.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you would think at some point when this was really unfolding a week ago and they knew they were going to move on from Ime Udoka and they were going to move on to Joe Mazzulla as their new head coach, that maybe they reached out to someone like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, who are really the two players you have to keep happy, and say, well, we're planning on promoting Joe Mazzulla as the next head coach of the Boston Celtics. What do you guys think? Because that's the way the league works. It's different than the NFL, where a player like Aaron Rodgers woke up one day and his quarterback's coach was let go. You wouldn't do that in the NBA, right? You wouldn't just let go of Kevin Durant's favorite assistant coach because management didn't get along with that assistant coach. You'd run that through the player first. But the NFL and the NBA are handled differently, although the NFL's catching up a little bit, especially when it comes to star quarterbacks. You know, we hear that Russell Wilson pulls a lot of weight in Denver, has an office in the building, and has some people involved there. So maybe it is changing in the NFL.
It's really
but
paying
I also
off for the Broncos right now.
It's really paying off. Well, again, you know, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, two different levels of quarterbacks, and Kevin Durant, different level than Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, to me, isn't worth all that aggravation. He's just not that good. But, you know, when you look at this, obviously in the NBA, you want to keep your star players happy. But I also think the Celtics at some point had to keep this somewhat secretive. They couldn't let the players know, well, we're investigating Ime Udoka, unless the players are part of the investigation, right? I mean, did the law firm that was hired to investigate this, were they called in, and then as part of their investigation, did they question players? You know, what did you know? What did you see? Those types of things. Because Jason Tatum said he found about this just like the rest of us did on Wednesday night a week ago, late at night, from a Woj bomb.
That's not good, Sap. From the organizational standpoint, Tatum shouldn't find out the same way you and I find out.
No, I wouldn't think so, unless again they're trying to keep this very secretive. But I think you'd have to clue him in at some point that something's going on, right? Unless the management are good. I don't think basketball teams are set up to understand this stuff. Now, do they have crisis management people in the building, or do they have them on retainer?
On retainer.
This is, right. So this is something completely different, because Brad Stevens, Wick Grossbeck, they're not equipped to handle this type of stuff. They're not trained for this.
Clearly not. No,
they're not. I mean, Brad Stevens is a basketball coach, basketball executive. Wick has made his money in certain ways, but as far as a major corporation that understands crisis management, you need to have someone on board, whether again in the building or on retainer, that you bring in during this and say, well, how do we handle this? Do we clue in the players? Do we do X, Y, and Z? Now, again, an NBA organization is a little bit different than the average corporation, because the players are the highest paid people within the organization, and they're what makes the team valuable at some point, right? So it's different than, say, Gillette having this issue with upper management. You know, they're not going to bring in the workers on the assembly line and clue them in, because they don't carry the same weight as a star player. So it's just run differently, but still you need to have crisis management and try to talk you through this process, because it does sound embarrassing that the best player on the team didn't find out about it any sooner than we did.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's stuff that makes the organization look bad. And obviously the main finger of blame needs to be pointed at Ime Udoka. We can't lose sight of that he put the team in a terrible situation. He put the players in a terrible situation, ownership, management, all the way down, everybody. He is primarily responsible for all of this. I think that ownership and management have made some subsequent mistakes, but nobody would be in this situation if it were not for Ime Udoka. So, the energy needs to be staying at that, level. It's saying, okay, it's his fault that they're in this situation. No, everything would be, it would be a much rosier picture had he not put everybody in an awful position right now. And so I hope that at the end of the day, for the sake of the future of the Celtics, because I'm a fan, that the players realizing how much they were screwed over by their coach, not by management, not by the team, not by the city of Boston, but by Ime Udoka himself. And, if they're upset, that's where they should focus their, frustrations, is at their coach. I don't know if that's the case, but I hope that is being, that they are mature enough to understand that is what's really at fault here.
Yeah, and I think the other question too, Jed, is when did ownership and management know what was taking place, and when did they know it? Because according to an NBA source, Doka had a clause in his contract that covered fraternizing with coworkers, and he was warned about potential inappropriate workplace relationships until the franchise was finally forced to hire a law firm to launch this independent investigation into his conduct. So, and I'm just reading that from a report. So they knew that something may have taken place in Philadelphia or Brooklyn or in San Antonio. Again, he moved pretty quickly from San Antonio, where he had been an assistant for a long period of time. Then he went to Philadelphia for 1 year and then moved quickly to Brooklyn for 1 year. And then the Celtics hired him. Like, did something happen in Philadelphia that was a warning sign that the 76ers said, we're just going to move away from this guy because it's ugly?
Right.
And it was never reported. And then he goes to Brooklyn. And then, of course, he gets the promotion to become the head coach of the Boston Celtics. So if the Celtics knew about this, there was something in his contract, talking about this, then they must have known something, and they looked the other way because he was a prime candidate. And look, in 1 year, he took a team that was a 500 team the year before, was struggling early this year, and got them to the NBA Finals where they lose to Golden State in 6 games. So obviously, we all agree the guy can coach, right? So
no question.
because he's such a prospect as a coach, that they looked the other way and said, well, we'll hire him. And again, he had that relationship with Tatum and Brown and Marcus Smart, and at the time Kemba Walker from Team USA, and they're like, okay, our star players were on board with this guy. He comes from the pop tree, which is better than the Belichick tree, to be quite honest. I mean, the pop tree at least has brought us some championships, right? I mean, yeah, Mike Budenholzer's from the pop tree, Nick Nurse is from the pop tree, and Ime's from the pop tree. So a little bit different than the Belichick tree, which is, about to be cut down because it's dying. But they just looked the other way because they wanted this guy as their next head coach, and they just hoped that these wouldn't resurface as a member of the Celtics, and less than a year later, he's gone.
Yeah, Sep, it's entirely possible that's the case. And if that's the case, then the Celtics did really poor on their due diligence of Ime Udoka. I look at it as it's certainly possible that they put it in for that exact reason. Like you said, maybe something happened in Brooklyn, Philadelphia, San Antonio, one of his previous spots. We don't know. But the other explanation is maybe it's just a boilerplate thing they put in with all their contracts, or teams put in with all their contracts. I don't know. I'm not privy to that sort of information and what is typical of a contract of an NBA coach or player or executive in terms of fraternization with, coworkers. I would think that it's a relatively standard contractual thing in general. And I think, again, this goes back to, if it is a standard thing, Sap, and it has nothing to do with his previous stops, then it's probably something that I would guess is not heavily enforced. But the fact that this was not a consensual relationship or relationships is really the crux of the matter here. And that,
you don't need a clause for that, right? You don't need a clause to
exactly
state that the coach can't be, fooling around with women, but also going further than that with sexual assault, battery, harassment. Like, do you really need that in a contract? I mean,
right,
at that
of course.
Point, unless Ime Udoka is an idiot, he's, is he going to be George Costanza saying, I wasn't aware that it wasn't good to have sex with the Portuguese cleaning woman on the desk at work. Like, you can't have that type of thing. You can't be that idiotic
exactly,
to have that
Sap.
type of reaction.
But I'm saying, like, okay, so there in every contract, all these clauses are enforceable, but it's kind of at the discretion of the team to enforce them. Like, in every player's contract, there's wording like, don't ride a motorcycle in the offseason, or we can, suspend you X amount of games. But if Jason Tatum or LeBron James was riding a motorcycle in the offseason and nothing happened to them, team's not going to suspend them or anything like that, because they're using their own discretion, saying, well, it's not worth it. I think the same thing probably goes for the clause that you're mentioning. If it is indeed a standard one, it says, okay, Ime is cheating on his wife. Like, we don't love this, but like, it's kind of none of our business. We can say, hey, Ime cut it out. But if he doesn't, it's more valuable to us that he coaches the team. But when it crosses the line into something that's not consensual, then it becomes, not just problematic from a culture standpoint, but problematic from a legal and criminality standpoint. And that's when you obviously have to draw the line. But we've talked about this again a few times now, Seth. Then why not just fire him? If it crossed the line to illegality or criminality, then why the half measure of a year suspension?
Yeah, without question. And again, back to that statement I read, fraternizing with coworkers. What the hell does that mean? I mean,
it's very broad.
Very broad. Dinner and drinks. Coworkers are your players. So could he not go out to have dinner with Jason Tatum? Of course he could have dinner with Jason Tatum. If he was having dinner and drinks with a female coworker, okay, that's probably frowned upon, but that's not going to lead to him being suspended for a year. But if it got to the point of sexual harassment, sexual battery, sexual assault, and it's
Sure.
ugly as Matt Barnes has detailed. It hasn't detailed, but has kind of put that little tease out there. Then that's ugly, and that's where we're going to see a criminal investigation. I mean, this thing is not dead. This thing is going to carry
No.
on because, again, TMZ's got its teeth in this. Other reporters have their teeth in this. I don't really believe that sports reporters, especially in this city, are going to really get into this. Although I think the Globe has done some things. You could tell from some of the questions that Dan Shaughnessy asked at last week's press conference that I think the Globe knows something and that they're, doing their due diligence reporting this. I don't think that for the most part, the sports reporters are going to get into this. Now it's going to get more news reporters
Certainly
involved.
not the beat reporters.
No, they're not going to go anywhere near this because they need access. I mean, if they go too far into this, no one's going to speak to them, and how the hell are they going to do their job? So that's where it gets really delicate. Although I will tell you this, Dan Shaughnessy in the mid-'80s reported that Larry Bird was in a fight at Chelsea's bar, broke his hand, and it impeded the Celtics from possibly winning a championship in 1985. They didn't speak to him again, and they had to take him off the beat. I know my good friend Ron Borges, he reported the drug issues with the 85 Patriots. The story dropped after they lost the Super Bowl to the Bears, and, it kind of impacted what he could do forward with the team. But those were two really great reporters who did their jobs. You don't have the same types of guys now. It's just different. It's a different time. I mean, the people that cover the teams half the time feel like fanboys. I mean, you can just even tell, especially with the Patriots and the Celtics. The Patriots, they're just scared shit to ask Belichick anything. If there was a real ballsy reporter down there when he pulls, his shit of day to day, or day by day, or whatever the hell he was talking about in his press conference today, or on to Cincinnati, I just would love for a reporter to stand up and go, "Hey, Bill, you're 10 games under 500 without Tom Brady as your quarterback. Stop the shit. Do you really have to talk to us like that? Do your job. Be better at your job before you're belittling us." I just wanted to get that off my chest.
No. It's not. It's not going to happen. But I think, Sap, you're on the money.
But you get my point,
different.
though. No one confronts anybody anymore. So it's left
right
to TMZ and whoever else is going to get in.
The teams are sensitive. They'll kick them out. They'll pull their access.
Yeah. Oh, you can't ask questions like that. And look, these teams are still stuck in the pandemic where, the Patriots still do a lot of their press conferences via Zoom. I think we're over this already. Can you let the reporters in to, have these press conferences where they actually see the person they're asking questions? It's a little bit different than asking people via Zoom than in person. Via Zoom, you can be a bigger wise ass like Belichick is than in person, although that's never stopped him before. But yeah, I mean, that whole clause, fraternization, fraternizing, what the hell does that mean? But your point's back to that point, Jen, and I just kind of went on a tangent, and I apologize, but why not just fire him at this point? The only thing I can think is, are they continuing to investigate this and other things come out? I doubt that's going to happen because, it seems like it's worse than we're ever going to hear about or believe. So yeah, just fire him at this point. Again, unless they just want to block him for 1 year from coaching Brooklyn. And they're just looking at it that, if we fire him, Brooklyn's going to hire him. Although if more stuff comes out,
no one's going to hire him.
I think he's clearly done with the Celtics. I mean, that's a done deal. He's never going to coach for the Celtics again. But if more crap comes out that Ime Udoka, again, is, Christian Bale's character, Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, that he's not coaching anywhere. And there's going to be a criminal investigation, and Lord knows what happens from that point forward.
My only theory, Sap, is that I guess it's twofold. It's that they don't want to fire him because then they'd have to pay out the bulk of his contract. Unless they say we're firing you for cause, which maybe they're able to do, and not pay him out the bulk of his contract. If that's the case, he can sue them and take them to court, and then all this stuff comes out. And perhaps the Celtics organization knew more than they're letting on earlier on, and they'll look really bad in a protracted lawsuit. So there's a lot of dimensions here. Those are, probably it. Most likely, it comes down to a legal protection thing, the suspension and not firing. But does that mean it's the right thing to do? No. If he did something that was criminally illegal, then he deserves to be fired. Period.
No, I think you're 100% right, Jed. The great take there on your part, because to me, we know Ime Udoka. Well, we don't know what he did, but if that comes out, our opinion of him is going to go down many rungs. And again, it could be a criminal investigation. But the way the Celtics handled this, or in this case, mishandled it, also looks poorly. So the Celtics may have said, "Look, we're going to suspend you. we're going to pay you. There's going to be some fines, and then we'll fire you at the end of the year, and then maybe you can go coach somewhere else. We don't want to divulge exactly what went on to not only protect you, but to protect us. Right. So it's kind of both parties are in trouble at this point, and they don't want to have any of this information out there in the open.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just an ugly situation that certainly can get uglier and probably will. Like you said, I imagine a news reporter, a TMZ reporter will get much more of the details of this story. I don't know when, but it seems like enough people know that it's hard to imagine everybody keeping their mouth shut. That's
Right.
just the human nature. Somebody will talk, somebody will get drunk and say something. It happens. But in the meantime, the Celtics do have a season to prepare for. And so that's what a lot of media was talking about, on media day, was how do you prepare for the season with this cloud over your head? Well, step one is they had to name a new interim coach. That's Joe Mazzulla, who you and I talked about very briefly on Friday. The team said all the right things about him. The players said they, trust him. They like him. He seems, ready to go and realizes it's a big opportunity. He is considered a rising star in the coaching ranks. He interviewed for a head coaching position with Utah this offseason. But the Celtics are still looking to add to that coaching staff now. You talked about Frank Vogel last week. Now we're hearing Jay Larranaga, who used to be on Brad Stevens' staff, that they're asking the Clippers for permission to have him come back. It's a whirlwind, and I'm sure the players feel completely caught in the middle of it.
Yeah, and the whole Jay Larranaga thing is kind of weird because he's a lead assistant with the Clippers, so it would be a lateral move for him to come back to Boston. Do the Celtics really think that the Clippers are just going to say, "Oh, sure, take our lead assistant"? I don't understand that. Are they tone deaf with that?
Yes.
I mean, it's not like you're taking the third or fourth assistant from the Clippers and saying, "Here's a promotion for you. You're going to sit by Jay Mazzulla's side and be the lead assistant." Okay, so that's an upgrade, more money. It'd be like becoming a positional coach to an offensive coordinator in the NFL. So here you go. Essentially, you're saying we want your offensive coordinator to be our offensive coordinator. The Clippers aren't going to just go along with this unless they get a draft pick for it.
Right, you'd probably have to give him a second round pick or something. And is that worth it?
No, and it's no money. I mean, Steve Ballmer's worth, I don't know, $50 billion. What kind of money are they going to send there to get Jay Larranaga? And I'm starting to think that the Celtics are not the most liquid franchise in the NBA. I've said this for several years.
I think you've been on the money with it. No pun intended.
Look, I think Wick is a wealthy guy, without question. He's wealthy by most people's standards, but he's not Steve Ballmer or Mark Cuban or the Buss family or pretty much any of the owners in the NBA. And this could have something to do with the contract with Ime Udoka that, okay, we'll suspend them, kick the can down the road. There's more TV money coming in a few years. We'll be more flush with cash at that point, but we can't just fire him without cause and then have to write him a big check. And I think that was behind Brad Stevens going from coach to president of basketball operations. They didn't want to just let him go and owe him $42 million. So they kind of gave him a promotion, which everybody kind of balked at and laughed at. And it's turned out to be pretty good because Brad Stevens did a nice job forming the organization and the roster last year. Now we can debate on how he's handled this Ime Udoka situation. I don't think the organization has really covered itself in glory when we're talking about that, but I don't think the Celtics are that flush. So you got Jay Mazzulla, who you're probably not paying a lot of money. You bumped him up a little bit to be at Joe Mazzulla. I know. What did I call him?
Jay Mazzulla. You're combining Jay Larranaga and Joe Mazzulla.
Right. Just a bunch of, Italian guys all over the place. All of a sudden the Celtics just want Italian guys to be coaching the team. Bring back Rick Pitino, who, by the way, is the best coach in college basketball. Best in-game coach in college basketball. There's one other thing I want to bring up to you, and I got a bone to pick with you, Mr. Stryer.
Yeah.
Your Oregon Ducks offensive coordinator, Kenny Dillingham, is that
correct?
His name?
That's his name.
Okay. Yep. This is the Oregon Ducks football team.
Yes.
He is now blaming LeBron James for teams trying to become super teams in college, not just in the professional ranks. So it's all LeBron's fault that, players are going to Alabama or Georgia or whatever. And that, I don't know if Kenny Dillingham is trying to push back against NIL, which again, I think Oregon benefits from NIL.
Oh, massively. Yes.
More than anyone, right? Because you got Uncle Phil Knight who can write checks to anybody he wants to. So now again, LeBron's being blamed for super teams in college football. So I just wanted to, bring that up and defend my guy.
It's also weird because LeBron actually is an Oregon football fan. Like, I know he's an Ohio State fan first and foremost, but he's been to a few Oregon games on the sidelines. And you're talking about his son is also being recruited by Oregon basketball.
Right.
So I don't know why they're rocking the boat with him there.
Yeah, it pissed the guy off. Yeah,
I like it. I'm anybody taking a cheap shot at LeBron, I'm never going to say don't do that. I'm always going to be pro cheap shot at LeBron. So I have no problem with that. But that's a good segue, Sap, into another kind of odd media day, because I'd say Monday was the weirdest media day that I can remember, because there were a bunch of teams. The Celtics obviously had that over their head. We're going to talk about the Suns in a second, and what was the other team that had a weird media day?
The Spurs had a weird one, right?
Spurs, and then the Nets had a very bizarre media day. That's the team I was thinking of. But okay, so the Lakers. We'll talk about the Lakers media day and stuff because we were just talking about LeBron. Patrick Beverley is now saying he's best friends with Russell Westbrook. That's what I saw. And I saw that Anthony Davis says his goal is to play 82 games this season. I just like a lot of delusion going on in LA, Sap.
Well, I mean, if you're counting the preseason games, the All-Star game, isn't there
counting practices?
Practices, postseason games? Maybe you can get to 82. Yeah, 82 practices as well. Patrick Beverley and Russell Westbrook, sometimes keep your friends close, your enemies closer. So that's probably the way he's handling Russell Westbrook. And then you bring Dennis Schroeder into the equation. Like, I thought that was...
He can't even get there, Sep. He's got a visa issue.
Right, he's got a visa issue. The Lakers are just, they're priceless. Yes, I can't wait till LeBron's on the court with Anthony Davis and a three-man backcourt of Schroeder, Westbrook, and Beverley. That's going to be just a sight to see at that point. So yeah, the Lakers are a mess at this point, but they still have LeBron. They still have Anthony Davis, who, maybe he's in shape this year and he's going to play a lot of games.
Okay. 82. How realistic is that, Sap?
Oh no, that's not happening. That's like, I'm going to be dating Scarlett Johansson next week. I mean, I probably got a better chance.
What did he play last year? 40? And the year before, I think 30 some odd.
I think he's played the last 2 years combined like a full season, which is better than Zion, who's played 85 games in 3 seasons. That's why when Zion's like considered one of the 20 best players in the league, I kind of push back. Like, how do we know when he's
looks like he's in good shape though, Sap?
Oh yeah.
Looks like he's lost some weight.
Yeah. Now who lost 100 pounds, Zion or James Harden? I kept hearing one of those guys.
James Harden claims he lost 100 pounds.
Did he stop dating his fiance? That's how he lost 100 pounds. Cause there's no way he weighed that much to get down to his playing weight, unless he was, even if he was 300 pounds, which, maybe he was, I don't know. He's 6'5". Is he down to 200, which he would look emaciated at that point. But
it's funny that Philadelphia seems like there always is drama there. And now it seems like there's the least amount of drama of the Eastern Conference team in Philadelphia right now.
Yeah. And all I could see is the pictures of the starting five. Joel Embiid is enormous, not out of shape enormous. Is he 7'3", 7'4"? Like, he's towering over everybody. Like, a big guys, he's towering. He's just like, he's Chamberlain-esque or Shaq-esque. I mean, in terms of his sheer size and with skill levels off the charts. So, yeah, I mean,
he's the most dominant player in the NBA when he wants to be.
Probably since Shaq, right? In terms of just sheer physical size and presence.
Plus skill, yeah.
And skill, right? You put it all together, it's like, oh, get out of his way. He's just better than everybody. Yeah, they could be the team in the East if on board and Doc Rivers stays out of the way and doesn't screw it up. But just a lot of real fun days at media day. And again,
the Suns one, Sap, was like dark,
terrible.
That was like watching a funeral. Here's what came out of Suns media day. Obviously, they're all talking about the Robert Sarver situation. By the way, I saw Robert Sarver's asking point for the Suns is $3 billion with a B dollars. So some punishment for him. He gets a $3 billion check.
He bought it for $401 million less than 20 years ago. So he's going to make 7.5 times his money for running the franchise poorly. And the same thing happened with the Dodgers.
What a world.
When the Dodgers were sold for $440 million like 20 years ago and were resold for several $billion. And they were poorly run. They couldn't even meet their payroll. So yeah, buy a franchise if you can. Even if you don't know what you're doing, you'll make 7-8 times your money within 2 decades.
Yeah, but the Suns, they were all talking about how disappointed and shocked they were with the report and how they're happy that Sarver's going up. But the biggest takeaway I took from the Suns press conference was that how miserable DeAndre Ayton seems. They asked him, "What was your, how are you feeling when the Suns matched your offer?" from the Pacers for a max contract. He's like, good. And then they're like, how's your, he didn't play. Remember, he barely played in that game 7. They got demolished by Dallas in Phoenix in that game. And Chris Paul said they didn't learn anything from that series. And DeAndre Ayton said he hasn't even talked to Monty Williams since then. So that team last year, Sap, you and I predicted that they would have a falling out in the regular season. They didn't in the regular season. They did in the postseason. It could be a really bad year for Phoenix this year with all this stuff hanging over their head.
Yeah, your center doesn't want to be there. Your point guard's a year older. At some point, as much as I love Chris Paul as a player, leader, and all of that stuff, and I think you've kind of come more to my side than before. But again, he's going to be approaching 40, 38, 39, 40, whatever. That's ancient for a point guard, although he doesn't play with a lot of athleticism, so he can still play. Yeah, I could see them going from 64 to like 46 wins, in the West is stacked. I think the Lakers will be better. Certainly the Clippers will be better. Golden State's there as usual.
Denver.
And the team, Denver, that's the team. That's the team to look out for. If Jamal Murray is healthy, I think Denver could really be a factor in the Western Conference. I agree with you 100%. But yeah, DeAndre Ayton looks like he wants to be anywhere but there. And again, they'll have to wait till midseason to trade him, which I think they will probably explore at that point, because he's not talking to the head coach.
No, they're holding him hostage for a lot of money. He's a very expensive hostage.
Very expensive. He looked like he was in a hostage video, didn't he?
Right, he did.
I don't want to be anywhere but here. So they're going to have to explore trading him. And again, maybe if Brooklyn gets off to a poor start, Phoenix gets off to a poor start, we get to midseason, and next thing you know, Durant's in Phoenix and DeAndre Ayton and some other pieces are in Brooklyn. That could be a real possibility. It's the one sport that any trade makes sense, right? Like nothing surprises us in the NBA, and really even
Players
in the NFL
so
now.
Mercurial, Sap. That's the thing.
Yeah, and look, if the sale is done by midseason, the new owner says, I don't want to be paying some guy who's got a puss on his face, and I got a chance to get Kevin Durant, go make this happen. That could happen. Entirely
possible. And yeah, that last press conference that we alluded to, the Nets one, was, a lot of questions about Kevin Durant's trade request, which he, didn't deny, but it didn't seem like anything's gotten considerably better. Since, he's basically, they had to ask poor Steve Nash and Sean Marks, this guy said he doesn't want you here. He doesn't deny it. They're like, that's what it is. It's the NBA, but they're still there. And Kyrie Irving is up there complaining, saying, that he lost $160 million because he's unvaccinated and he's a martyr, and, doing the whole Kyrie act. And I don't know how that's going to go in Brooklyn. This talent is certainly there, but man, it just it doesn't seem like anybody is happy to be there.
No. I mean, I think Kyrie would prefer being in LA with the Lakers.
Almost 100%, I would say yes.
And Durant would prefer to be in Phoenix, Miami, maybe even Boston.
Maybe not now in Boston.
Not now, especially without Ime Udoka here, because that was one of the draws, because they have a really good relationship. So yeah, both of those guys don't want to be there. And then who the hell knows what Ben Simmons is thinking or feeling? I mean, I think you could put a mirror under Ben Simmons' nose and it wouldn't fog up. So that's that team again. If it all comes together and they play on the court together and everything works, oh man, that's a talented team. But I would actually have more confidence in Philadelphia right now than Brooklyn.
Yeah, and Miami too is also lacking a power forward. They're asking Jimmy Butler about that. He said he'd prefer to not have to play power forward at all, because they lost PJ Tucker in the offseason. So they got a little bit worse as well. I don't think anybody's expecting Tyler Hero to, take another huge leap and become a star level player. So, I could see it. Milwaukee is probably the team that's the favorite right now in the East, but Philadelphia, without a doubt, could be there. Also interesting to note in Miami, Sap, Jimmy Butler's new hairstyle.
I saw that.
Something. I didn't know he had that much hair, but
I
he shaved his face.
He did. I think Jimmy Butler's one of the best looking dudes in the league. I really do. I think his personality, just everything.
And not with that
him.
Hair, though.
Not with that hair. I don't like the hair. I think when you're that good looking a guy, you don't need to get the face, out of the picture by putting all that hair. It's like, why would a good looking dude have all these tattoos on his face? Jimmy Butler doesn't have those. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the hair. And look, and I think Milwaukee is the safe pick, right? Because they have the best player and they have
the least drama.
By far the least drama, because their best player is not about drama, and it's Milwaukee. There's not a lot going on up there. Not a lot of hits since Laverne and Shirley. So you also have to look at Cleveland, though, because of the moves they made in the offseason by getting Donovan Mitchell to go with, 3 other all-star caliber players. They could be a team that gets together and just kind of quietly moves its way up to the top.
Sure, they're
of the
feeling
conference.
good about themselves right now. Yeah, without a
Right.
doubt.
And then you got the Celtics with all this other stuff hanging over them. And then the injury concerns with Rob Williams. That's a problem. You probably won't see him till the first of the year. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them. But yeah, I think Milwaukee's like it's like a safe stock, right? Like, okay, it's
Sure.
McDonald's. Buy the McDonald's stock. It's going to go up incrementally. You're going to
Their
get
only risk is that if Giannis goes down, they're screwed. But that's
of course
the case with
that's any player,
great player, right?
Yeah, exactly. And look, I trust Giannis, and I would bet on Giannis all the time. He looked like he blew out his knee in the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago, and came back a week later and dominated the finals. He's just that rare breed.
He's like LeBron, where I'm not sure they could actually get like severely hurt.
No, I don't think
knock
so.
on wood. I hope neither of them do.
Grow a new ankle or something. Yeah, get that type of superpowers.
They're built like bomb shelters.
Right. Yeah. There's not a lot that looks like it's going to hurt them at any point.
I think Milwaukee, safe pick, and we'll do a season preview as the preseason is just about to start, and the season is just a few weeks away, believe it or not. So we'll give all of our picks before then, but until then, dark clouds hanging over a few teams, not least of which is my beloved Boston Celtics. So we'll see how they adapt to that. But that is the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks to Full Press Coverage. You can check out our social medias at John Sap 25 at Jet Stryer, and you can find the show wherever podcasts are found, iTunes Store, on your phone, Spotify, wherever you want to go. We're there. And we will be back later with a new edition of podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you then. See ya.